Welcome back into the five-star sit-down alongside Devin Henry. I'm Jordan Ham, and we are now joined by Marana head coach Louie Ramirez, and he has a special perspective being a high school coach, a former college coach. He's seen both sides of the recruitment process, and so we wanted to have him join us as we approach that February signing day. Coach, thanks so much for joining us.
Pleasure having me, guys.
So you're in year 2 with Marana. Just how's the transition gone from really kind of setting the groundwork in this past year now as you transition into that second year?
You know, it's been good. You know, you always look at see what you did really well at, what you struggled with, and kind of going into the off season and seeing where you can build. You know, obviously we're going to have our work cut out for us, replacing, a Trenton Bourget and the great job that he did here in his career at Marana. But, I'm looking forward to the future. I'm actually heading to the middle school today to kind of see those incoming freshmen they're going to be coming into the high school next year. And there's a lot of good players. So it's been fun thus far.
And does that pass when you're at NAU recruiting change a little bit about how you coach your student athletes, not just on the field, but off the field when it comes to your football team?
Yeah, I think that's critical, because I tell them, if you guys want to play college football and you want to get recruited, there's no secret, but it's about being a good person, being a good student, and being a good athlete in that order. That in my opinion, is what gets colleges knocking on your door. Not only what you do on the football field, but how you represent yourself in the classroom, how you are in the community, how you are with your peers on campus, your social media. So, obviously because I was doing all of that at NAU, I try and kind of fill our guys in like, hey, listen, this is what coaches are looking for. This is what they see. They can jump online and just Google you and pull up your Snapchat, Twitter, and everything. And so I just try and I try and be real as possible with these kids and just let them know the expectations.
Now, on the other side, it's a busy time of year, I'm sure, for you. Plenty of coaches coming on campus to check out your players. Going through that process on the other side, what sort of advice are you giving your players as coaches are coming in and making their own pitches for their own programs?
I just tell them it's just, obviously, like you just said, it's a process, and, you're just respectful. You got to be humble that, the coaches are coming through. We just had NAU in here yesterday. Aaron Pflugrad and Robin Pflugrad are dear friends of mine. They came by to see our guys that we have coming up through the ranks, and it's a great time because it gives all the younger guys, including our freshmen and sophomores who are going to be contributors, hey, that could be me talking to that coach, when I'm a senior, when I'm a junior, so it's great for the entire school.
And looking back when you're at NAU in this position a couple weeks before you get to this last signing day, what is that like for you as a recruiter in these final couple weeks here trying to grab a few more names up on your bucket list?
Oh, it's crunch time, man. It's crunch time. You're trying to hustle and bustle all the way around the states and getting guys on the phone, trying to trip guys, last couple of weeks to try and get them to commit to your school. It's a little hectic, but I think it's it's part of the overall process of the recruiting. It's why I think the early signing period is so good. You don't have to worry about this hectic time coming into February. So I think it's especially for programs like NAU who with the coaching staff change this past couple of months, I think it's critical. You're how many guys can I go sign and create a strong class for 2019?
We're actually having Coach Pflugrad on right after you in this next segment, so we're going to get plenty of good perspective. It's an NAU-heavy show today here on the five-star sit-down. So one of your players, Jordan Morgan, was highly sought after by quite a few Pac-12 programs. He ended up signing with Arizona. What can U of A fans expect from him over the next couple of years at the next level?
I got to tell you what, though, and I'm an ASU guy, I'm an NAU guy, but what Coach Sumlin is building over at the U of A is special. That whole staff, with Mazzoni, Jeremy Springer, ST coordinator, Marcel Yates, those guys you talk about owning, your hometown, and Tucson's got some players now, and they can expect Jordan to, in my opinion, he's going to be playing as a true freshman. There's not a more athletic tackle, offensive tackle that I've seen at 6'5", 270 that can do the things that Jordan does. You know, he's got great bend, he's got great leverage. You know, he's that much of an athlete. I had him returning kicks this year, you know, as an offensive tackle for us. So I was doing a little unorthodox things. I put him at quarterback one time. You know, he lost his 7 yards, but you know, it's just the kid deserves it. You know, you talk about a guy that does it the right way and isn't worried about all the flash, isn't worried about the stats. You know, he shows up, puts his nose to the grindstone, and goes to work. You know, and he gets it done in the weight room. And that's why I think a lot of high school kids nowadays, they just, you know, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and, you know, I'm not going to work out, you know, and, you know, Jordan isn't like that. Not on any social media, and he's true to who he is. So they're getting a steal for sure.
Obviously, you guys having a little bit of fun over there down south, but with spring ball coming up, what does that look like coming up ahead here with the 2019 season? You know, it feels far away, but I'm sure, as you know, it comes pretty quick.
Oh, it's year-round. You know, I told the guys that off-season started last year, you know, when the season ended. So we're already in the weight room right now since January into our program. One of our coaches, Coach Catalano, who's, you know, played at the U of A, he's running our strength program right now and doing a great job with the kids after school. Those are the ones that aren't in, you know, sports right now, and baseball and wrestling and track. So we got a bunch of guys in there that are ready to work. And so looking forward to next year, you know, we're going to be young, you know, but I think it's going to be a great opportunity to groom these guys and, you know, the overall scheme and, you know, what we did offensively and defensively, and just tweak some things and just put guys in position to be successful.
Coach, we appreciate the time. I know it's a busy time of year as you're getting going with spring ball and all your off-season workouts, so we appreciate the time and your insight as always.
Yeah, no doubt. I appreciate you guys having me anytime.
Thank you, Coach. And that is Louie Ramirez, the Marana head coach. Like we said, we wanted to have him on because he has such an interesting perspective, being on both sides of it in the span of essentially 2 years, you know, going from recruiting the state heavily to being on the other side and having some guys where, you know, there were quite a few coaches heading on campus to check them out and seeing it from the other side.
And it's fun to pick his brain because there's so much that goes into recruiting that even as just a high school head coach, you're not going to know the ins and outs of. Mm-hmm. Now that he knows the ins and outs, the process, and he knows people at NAU who are coming down to Tucson to talk to some of his players, I mean, that completely changes your outlook to high school football, I think. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's really fun to talk to him about that, because how do you change the way that you mold young men now that you know? What is that next step like, even if it's just the recruiting process in general? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, what he said about especially U of A and the recruiting efforts they've made in the, you know, southern Arizona. And he did mention, I feel like in the past couple of years, we've seen more and more top flight Tucson-based players, where usually you may have one or two, but it seems like, you know, last year's class you had Jamari Joyner and Mateo Mele, two Pac-12 guys that were a lot of programs were looking at, and it's no different moving forward. It seems like the next couple of classes have some really good classes. I also love hearing that Jordan Morgan was returning kicks because this guy is a monster. He is huge. And it reminded me a couple years ago when Austin Jackson, who is now an offensive tackle at USC, the #1 player in the state at the time, I was at a game where a punt got tipped, and he was actually playing a little bit further back than you know, you would think he would be playing defending that punt. It fell in his hands, and he took it 15 yards. It was kind of a shanked, tipped punt, but he brought it in for a touchdown and just showed his athleticism right there. It sounds like that's exactly what Jordan Morgan can do as well.
And people forget this is high school
football.
Not you know, go out there and have some fun.
Yeah.
And if that's what it takes sometimes, because I'm sure that some of the defenders would love to just play a couple snaps on the offensive side, that's fun. That's high school football.
And that gets back to the offensive tackles. We've talked about it on AZ Audibles when we talk about various offensive linemen, you know, the Tosh Bakers, the Cade Bennettts, the Noah Nelsons. These guys are huge. That's the first thing you see about them is their size, but they can move their feet pretty well.
They're fast.
And they are very athletic. So great stuff from Coach Ramirez. Now we're going to take it to a current NAU staff member, Aaron Pflugrad, the offensive coordinator, was a Sun Devil wide receiver, now definitely canvassing the state for the Lumberjacks. That's coming up next on the 5-Star Sit Down.